no longer keep going to that school and enduring the torment of that constant humiliation and getting made fun of pretty much all day, every day.
The red flags were there.
If you're trying to help and you just hear, I'm fine, then you just know that they're not fine and they need your help.
Hi, and welcome back to Safer, Smarter Teens. I'm Lauren Book. In our previous lessons, we learned how to recognize the characteristics of healthy versus unhealthy relationships. We talked about being on the lookout for boundary violations and unhealthy imbalances of power in relationships. And we learned about sexual abuse, a very serious boundary violation, and abuse of power, often by someone who is known, trusted, even loved by the victim. Today, we're going to look at other threats from unhealthy relationships that are much more common in the teenage years: harassment and dating violence.
I think bullying is a buzzword these days, and everybody associates negative interactions with being bullying. And it may not necessarily always be bullying. It can be harassment. And so I think, first of all, you have to distinguish whether it's harassment or bullying.
School is a place for learning. School is not a place to be harassed in any way. And if you're uncomfortable in any way, report the abuse and it will stop.
I remember hearing one of them call someone a faggot, and it was probably jokingly, but I was like, dude, that's not a word you should call anyone. Like, it's just not nice. So they saw that I was sort of sensitive about that word and were like, oh, well, you must be a faggot. And I immediately was like, well, no, I mean, I like girls. And then one kid heard that and saw that I was sensitive towards it. And so he was like, yo, I heard that kid's a faggot. And immediately, it catches on like wildfire, and they see one kid being sensitive about a bully-ish type word and immediately start using it and ganging up on that person. So that's what happened to me. And eventually, being a more sensitive kind of guy, I didn't take it very well, and it caused me to cry in front of them, which they fed on even more.
Certainly as a mom, having your son come home crying, and it really was quite overwhelming and very disappointing that other kids would treat him like that, because he had grown up with them. They were his friends. I had picked Evans up from school and we were driving home, and he said, Mom, the kids are not bullying me as much as they were, because I've agreed to take their trays from the school lunch up for them. I pulled over in my van and started crying. Obviously, it's still as a mom.
If someone was going through that now, I would tell them, it did take me a while to come out of that. It sort of, especially being so young when it happened, defined me for a long time, and I had a lot of social anxiety and not trouble making friends, but even when I did make friends, I always was sort of hesitant or reticent to really be myself around them. And it did take a lot of being honest with those friends and learning to be more comfortable around people in general, and really just trying earnestly to be more comfortable around people. But I did eventually, I would say, fully get over it and am back to quote unquote normal.
A lot of young men fall into the trap of social conformity. And social conformity is just going along with what you think everybody else is doing. And it happens because young men don't want to be ostracized from the group or be considered a nerd or square or anything of that nature. And so they kind of tend to go along with what the group is saying. And a lot of that is perpetuated by popular media and what they see in the videos and magazines and things of that nature about what it is to be a man and how men are supposed to act. So it becomes very important for those young guys to kind of work on forming their own identity.
I think that the advent of technology and smartphones, social media has greatly not just accelerated the speed at which information travels, including threats, gossip, harmful information, but also the scope at which it travels. Something that somebody says about another student, in the old days when we were kids, it might take a period or two for that to get around school, and now it can happen instantaneously. And there's very little that the victims can do to prevent that.
When you hit send, it's forever. If kids think there's programs that, I'm the sheriff of Broward County, and anyone who's listening to me, I'm telling you, there's no program that could delete what you sent. So whenever you're angry at someone and whenever you want to send a negative text or a negative message, this is what I would encourage you to do. Read it, reread it, and then delete it. And you can never go wrong.
For young adults 17 and under, sexting is essentially sending, distributing a photo or a video of another nude person. It can either be yourself or someone else who is nude that causes some type of harm to a minor. So two minors sending naked photos, either again of their bodies or someone else, can be a criminal act. Sexting can be criminal.
It is absolutely incredible the power that the actions of a few can have in a school, in a society, in a generation. And all it takes is a few people doing the right thing in a very vocal, visible way for it to become contagious in the behavior and the comportment of a whole society. So can a few people have an impact? You bet you. I think historically we've seen incredible examples of that. Do not be silent, for silence kills, silence hurts. And we easily identify physical hurt. We have a difficult time often understanding emotional pain, but the end result can be equally dramatic.
I felt defeated. I felt disgusting. I felt like that was not something that I intended to do and I didn't want to happen, so it wasn't something that I was prepared for.
While men are also sexually harassed, for sure, sexual harassment is so commonplace for women. People feeling free to touch a woman's rear end or touch her breasts. You know, women are often groped. It's a very common occurrence, and don't identify it as sexual harassment because it's so common. And in fact, what we find is that young women in particular don't identify that as sexual harassment because it's well, this is just what people do to women. You know, so I have to learn how to manage that without seeing it as, they know it's unpleasant. They don't see it as something wrong and there should be a judgment that it's wrong and people should intervene.
There's nothing wrong with being different sometimes. You know, a lot of times males feel like they have to sort of go along to get along, be a part of the crowd, the in-group, in order to get that level of popularity that they may be seeking. So
I guess that inappropriate touch was there first. And then I noticed he kept staring at me, and I'm like, why is this kid staring at me? Like, did I do something to him? Does he think he knows me? I knew something was off. I knew something was not right. I needed to get myself out of that situation. I just couldn't get myself out before the bad had happened.
First of all, if you're under 21, you legally cannot consume alcohol. So I feel like I should say that first. You're already breaking the law. But if you are going to drink, it happens in high school, it happens in college. If you are going to drink, I would say drink in a safe environment, meaning somewhere that you're familiar with. Drink with people that you know. I think there's a lot of unfortunate circumstances that come into being at a party with people that you don't know. Have a friend who is designated as being the sober friend that night, meaning someone not to just take you home, but someone to recognize when you are potentially going to make a decision that you normally wouldn't make sober. Someone who you trust and will respect to stop you from making that decision.
Always know who you're coming with, always know who you're gonna leave with, set a time to leave. If your friends are not there at that certain time, go looking for them, make it known that you need to find this person. Because I've heard of stories where the person wasn't kidnapped. They were just kind of brought off to the side. Next thing you know, they're drugged and in a bed and being assaulted.
Ways to reduce your vulnerability to any type of violence in relationships is to trust your gut. If something doesn't feel right, don't do it. You don't have to. You don't owe anyone an apology if you feel uncomfortable with anything. Really stand up for yourself and know that you have a right to say no and you have a right to your feelings.
Sexual violence peaks in the teen years, but you can be the change to protect yourself and others. 83% of 10th graders said they would be more likely to turn to a friend for help with dating violence than to a teacher, counselor, parent, or other caring adult. Sometimes all it takes is a listening ear and the willingness to comfort a friend in need. Be the change that your friend may need. It might make all the difference in the world. How will you help your friend if they confide in you that they are being abused? Where can you go to get help for your friend? Think about those trusted adults that can help your friend.